Szeretettel köszöntök mindenkit!
Welcome, everyone. Today, in Hungary alone, there are hundreds of thousands of infertile couples. They want children, but it simply doesn't happen. And this way, we can't put our nation on a path to growth. But what's causing this increase in infertile couples in Hungary? And why does it seem like there are more and more effeminate young men? Why is the number of cancer cases rising in Hungary? And why has there been a five-fold increase in the number of young people suffering from cancer? For decades, they've been poisoning us silently and deliberately. When we drink mineral water or soda from a plastic bottle, or eat something from a can, or consume our ordered meal, then we get sick from this. These same global deep state money men who poison us, what Andrade would call the swine-faced lords, stuff us with pharmaceuticals and vaccines. After confusing people's hormonal systems and making them repeatedly ill, these same lords carry out mental and cultural brainwashing on the weakened humanity. The end result is a rootless, easily controlled, faceless mass with identity confusion in both national and gender terms. A society that has already lost its most important pillars, like family and national cohesion. And that's precisely the goal. This is how the swine-faced lords can rule over humanity. Today I'm going to show you these connections, but first, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. We're now well over 300,000 and there's no politician who can catch up. I thank you all very much for that. Please help, because everywhere they try to suppress me, censor me, silence me, and the algorithm doesn't push me. But you can help with that. Thank you again, so please share and spread this video too, like the others. Now let's begin.
Napjainkban már általánosan ismert és elfogadott álláspont, hogy
Nowadays, it's commonly known and accepted that smoking is harmful to health. Despite this, manufacturers denied the harmful effects for decades, recommending and advertising it instead, while knowing the reality full well. And while many people know about smoking, far fewer know what benzotriazole is, the compound called BTA, which we've been ingesting for decades through our drinking water and food. A few months ago, in June 2025, Germany officially initiated stricter classification of BTA as suspicions arose that it's carcinogenic, damages fetuses, and disrupts the hormonal system. Yet the European Union leadership still didn't ban it immediately. Similarly, fewer people know what bisphenol A is, BPA, an additive used in plastic manufacturing. This is one of the most widely manufactured compounds we encounter almost everywhere. For a long time, it was even in babies' plastic bottles. It enters the human body from the interior coating of cans, from plastic containers and bottles, or from cash register receipts, parking tickets, and transit tickets. BPA is even present in household dust, which comes from the wear of various plastic objects and can enter the body through inhalation. But people can also be poisoned with it from medical devices in hospitals. Dental fillings can contain bisphenols, and in hospitals, plastic tubes and equipment used for dialysis or other treatments can be sources. Bisphenol A, BPA, primarily acts as a severely hormone-damaging substance because its structure resembles estrogen, which is commonly called the female hormone. By doing this, BPA also suppresses testosterone production. Here might be one of the first reasons why today's men don't seem as masculine as men of past eras. According to research, men's average testosterone levels have significantly and continuously declined over recent decades, severely affecting younger generations as well. A 40-year-old man today typically has much lower hormone levels than his father or grandfather had at age 40. Lower testosterone levels and other harmful effects of BPA lead to male infertility and other fertility problems. This is also one reason why the number of infertile couples is growing. But BPA causes harm to both sexes, including women, and to all age groups, because it severely destroys the immune system, which can increase the risk of allergic diseases like hay fever and autoimmune processes. This might be one reason why there were hardly any allergic children in the past, while nearly a third of today's minors suffer from some allergic problem. But this poison can also cause developmental abnormalities in fetuses and young children, influence nervous system development, which can later cause behavioral disorders like hyperactivity or cognitive problems. BPA is also responsible for some cases of diabetes, cardiovascular complaints, and cancerous diseases. The leaked information in recent times has become so serious that decision makers could no longer hide these harmful effects. So, for example, the European Union also created a regulation, and from this year, from July 2026, it will no longer be possible to market single-use packaging, cans, or such plastic packaging containing BPA. But of course, they'll still sell these cans of plastic bottles and packaging while supplies last, so you'll still need to be careful for a while. But we don't just need to watch out for BPA content. Plastic softeners or phthalates have specifically anti-androgenic effects, meaning they're anti-male hormone. Besides testosterone reduction, they can cause infertility, lead to sexual development disorders in fetuses, cause allergies and asthma, cardiovascular diseases, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and increase the risk of obesity. They're poisoning us continuously and unnoticed with phthalates too. Through PVC products, floor coverings, shower curtains, or cosmetics, shampoos, perfumes, nail polishes. Most commonly, it can enter our bodies from food packaging, plastic storage containers, lunch boxes, or plastic bottles. The sickened humanity then rushes to pharmacies or demands vaccines because of their weakened and deteriorated immune systems. And the LGBTQ and other propaganda pours down on the hormonally confused youth. Thanks to people like Krista Bodish, even here in our country, starting from childhood, they can brainwash even children with storybooks like Sleeping Joey. A further consequence of hormone damage is irritability, anxiety, and increased tendency toward depression, as well as decreased motivation, competitive spirit, and overall zest for life. It's not hard to see that such a society can easily become the weak, easily controlled, identityless mass mentioned earlier. But is all this accidental, or did the global financial power know from the very first moment exactly what it was poisoning humanity with and how? Let's look at a few concrete examples and let you draw your own conclusions. One of the world's largest tobacco companies is Philip Morris International. One of its most important key figures, former CEO George Weissman, was born in 1919 in New York's Bronx as the child of Eastern European Jewish immigrants. He joined Philip Morris in 1952 and for long decades publicly questioned the scientific connection between smoking and cancer, claiming there was no conclusive evidence. George Weissman's mentor and Philip Morris's former chairman and CEO was Joseph F. Cullman. Under Cullman and Weissman, the company became the world's #1 tobacco power, went through massive growth, and promoted smoking worldwide with Marlboro and other products. Cullman was also a fourth-generation member of a New York Jewish tobacco merchant family who was connected through family ties to many large companies and retail chains that fundamentally shaped commerce and the advertising industry, making expansion easier. Joseph F. Cullman also publicly questioned the scientific evidence linking smoking and cancer. Though as a private individual, he chose to quit. Their successor at Philip Morris, CEO William Campbell, then lied under oath to the U.S. Congress in 1994 about nicotine's addictive properties. while knowing full well that cigarettes cause negative health effects for consumers. In contrast, it's been possible to know for about 400 years that smoking is harmful to health. In 1602, for example, an English essay appeared that drew parallels between chimney sweeps diseases and smoking. And at the end of the 18th century, Samuel Thomas von Simmering, a German physician, already linked pipe smoking to mouth cancer. But let's see what the situation is with bisphenol A, BPA, spreading. Could they have known long before industrial application began that this mimics the female hormone estrogen? As early as 1936, British researchers, including Edward Charles Dodd, demonstrated in laboratory experiments that BPA has estrogen receptor activating effects. At that time, it was being investigated as a synthetic estrogen. In fact, BPA competed with other, stronger synthetic estrogens. They specifically wanted to use it as a female hormone replacement drug. And despite a Russian chemist, Alexander Dianin, first synthesizing the compound in 1891, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration was responsible for its global spread and widespread industrial application. They were the ones who officially approved the use of polycarbonate and epoxy resin coatings in the food industry in 1960. Following this, BPA-based packaging spread worldwide and became the global food industry standard for decades. Even later in the Soviet Union, they followed the American FDA's decision. The FDA director at the time of approval in 1960 was one George P. Larrick. It's worth knowing about him that he was a member of several semi-secret clubs, such as Cosmos or the International Club, where he could come into close contact with those representing the pharmaceutical industry and ruling global financial power. At this very time, in the early 1960s, the FDA was accused of protecting not people's health, but industrial profit. Senator Hubert Humphrey, who later became Vice President of the United States, investigated the FDA's operations at the head of a subcommittee. The most serious charge was corruption and collusion. Among other things, it was revealed that Henry Welch, head of the FDA's Antibiotics Division, secretly received over $280,000, several $1 million in today's value, from pharmaceutical journals for articles praising those companies' products. So it could hardly have been accidental that they unleashed all kinds of poisons on humanity. Now let's look at who all the beneficiaries of all this are, who the owners are. Philip Morris USA is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Altria Group, and its main institutional owners are Vanguard Group, Capital World Investors, BlackRock, and State Street Corporation. The world's largest plastics company is the American ExxonMobil. Here are the main owners: Vanguard Group, BlackRock, and State Street. And if someone has already gotten sick, or more precisely, been made sick, then comes Big Pharma, comes the pharmaceutical industry. Let's see who the most important players are globally and who their owners are. Right here is Johnson & Johnson. The main owners are Vanguard Group, BlackRock, State Street, and JP Morgan. Then there's the well-known Pfizer, whose most important shareholders are Vanguard Group, BlackRock, and State Street. And here's Merck, which outside the United States and Canada, so in Hungary too, is only known as MSD. Here the main owners are Vanguard Group, BlackRock, and State Street Corporation. So the major owners are in every case BlackRock, Vanguard Group, and State Street. The joke is that these are also each other's owners. Vanguard Group is the main owner of BlackRock. And Vanguard Group is moreover an inner circle. They don't just throw their shares on the market. And the investors, the bosses, manage the investors' money, who of course are secret people. We don't know exactly who the main shareholders are there. And although almost anyone can be a small shareholder, in reality, this is a very narrow circle. Because here the biggest investors are very few, connected to each other by 1,000 threads. They're behind these funds. But this will be the subject of a separate video. What's essential for us here is that these funds don't just rotate or manage money, but they determine for every company they own what political direction they must represent, what pharmaceutical industry interests they must represent, even during a pandemic situation. And they determine almost everything from LGBTQ propaganda to so-called diversity. Everything comes from them for these companies, and if any company doesn't comply, they devalue it and its financing becomes much more expensive. Well, this is how the circle closes. Because the same narrow financial power that has been making our society sick for decades, here we're primarily thinking of developed world societies, so European and North American societies, then supplies these countries and nations with pharmaceuticals and vaccines, and also prescribes to companies what kind of mental brainwashing they must carry out with LGBTQ propaganda, weakening of nations, facilitating migration and immigration, the so-called diversity. We already see this in Hungary too, with various Wolt delivery drivers, food deliveries and everywhere, how this works. How they prescribe this kind of so-called diversity to these companies. And the end result of all of this is a weakened society stripped of its roots, which can then be more easily ruled. Well, that's the goal. And it's extremely important that we support political forces in Hungary and everywhere in the world who recognize how this world works and have the courage to fight even against these global financial systems. Don't forget this now either. On April 12th in the elections, when you cast your vote, only choose a political force that isn't backed by oligarchs and who are brave enough to speak these truths and take up the fight against this global financial power. Because if we don't do this, they don't just exploit us economically, but now, as clearly visible through our health, they're literally making us sick physically and mentally. Let's fight against them, because we have no other option. Only with broad cooperation can they be defeated. Since money, power, the media, and everything is on their side. What's on our side is if we organize ourselves, unite, and fight against them together.